Hey everybody, this is Clint Recon for Dummies. This video is going to be about anarcho-capitalism. I'm going to try to keep it as quick as I can, but it's a pretty in-depth subject, so it might need a little bit of a research on your part, but I'm just trying to give you an introduction, feel to it, and how I think it would function. The main thing to understand about anarcho-capitalism is it is a society with property rights protected, but without a state. So that's the reason anarchy comes in as the first of it. But it's not like the left's version of anarchy, where they somehow figure that society can function without any kind of law, and everybody would get along and all this. But that's just not human nature. The way this side of society would function is all the things that the government does would still be done, with the exception of a few things. But it would be done by private companies instead of a government. The main thing that people object to when they hear about it is how would this society provide law? How would it, punish those who commit crimes and things like that? How would it function? How courts would function? That thing. Well, the first thing is the actual law itself. How it would be established? How would society come up with these laws? The main thing to understand is this society would have no laws as far as regulations, business regulations, things like that. It'd be done mainly because of people that do corrupt things and coercion, and companies would be sued, and each individual case would be tried instead of having one set law. The reason for this is because regulations of themselves usually are the cause, or are come up with by companies that they're supposed to be regulating. I mean, you got to think who's lobbyists in Washington for the regulations that are coming down the pipeline. I mean, it's the companies that are getting affected, the industries that are getting affected. So they're the ones that come up with the laws, and they end up hurting the smaller groups in their industries while not hurting themselves as much. It's basically what regulations do. So in effect, they're becoming more competitive because they can afford to pay for these ridiculous regulations and pay to keep legal, whereas their smaller competitors can't. And this makes it eventually it just keeps getting worse and worse, and then we have something like the oil industry now, which is almost impossible to get a startup going. That's the reason that gas prices just keep getting soar. One of the reasons. Inflation is another one, but I already explained that. So how this would work is the society would have all the laws that the morals of the society already bring about. So, in other words, all the main laws that people think about, that what law is supposed to protect the people, and that's murder against murder and theft, and assault includes rape and incest and things of that nature, and fraud, basically, which is probably could be included in theft. But fraud, if you ever commit fraud against a company commits fraud against somebody, then they can be sued and they can be criminally liable for whatever they did. How this would go about is probably the main thing would be that there would not be any one universal law as far as like the United States government has laws. It would be more about the judges that the law or the court cases are held under. So each judge would be independent, and they would have independent morals and an independent way of trying cases. Like, for instance, if somebody come into one judge, they might be really against people that commit theft, and they might not be a lot more stiff penalties for the people that commit theft compared to another person. So the person who got something stole from them would want to go to this person, but the person who is accused of stealing something would probably not want to go to somewhere like that, because they might be might be worse for them off of. But the thing is eventually, I think what would happen is you would have to have law insurance in order to get on people's property, so just in case they have to sue you for doing something, or vice versa, you sue them on their property, they would have to have some kind of law insurance. So if you sue them and they lose the case, then their law insurance will cover cover it up to whatever the limit is for their policy. So therefore, the insurance company would have to do research on their clients in order to come up with the appropriate premiums. Kind of like how, you know, if you're a bad driver, you have higher premiums on your car insurance. But if you're constantly in trouble and having to go to court all the time, then you're probably going to pay more premiums because they're going to have to pay out more. So, I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. But in that case, when you get insurance like that, the two insurance companies that are on opposite sides, if it's not the same insurance company, would have to agree upon the judge that you go to. So, you know, it wouldn't be a one size fits all as far as, like, you know, the company of the defendant wouldn't be able to choose somebody that they know are going to be more lenient with them. It would have to be, coming together on a decision as far as who what judge they go to. And the other thing is, there would be no laws for victimless crimes because nobody would be there to prosecute you. Nobody would be there to get, you know, against you on the other side. You know, so in other words, there would be no drug laws because in this society, in any society really, you're not hurting anybody except for the person who's using them. You know, whoever is using them is the only person who's getting hurt by the use of drugs. Unless they get in a car and have an accident, and then it's a completely different issue because you have hurt someone else. So that's how court would be, your laws would be handled as far as that goes. You would have probably a set of universal laws obeyed by all people in that industry in order for people to ever patronize with you. So in other words, you would have to, if you convicted someone of murder, you'd probably have to have, you'd have to be, have that as one of your laws. If you did think somebody committed murder, that they have to go, they have to pay out whatever it is. And how that would work also, I forgot to explain that. How prisons would work, it wouldn't be like a prison system like this. The judge wouldn't give you a certain amount of time that you have to go to prison. What they would do is they would fine you whatever the amount is for however heinous a crime it is. So if, let's say, you committed a murder, they might fine you $10 million or something like that, or $1 million, something that your insurance company, your premiums won't cover. So therefore, your insurance company would still have to cover it. But in order to get over top of those premiums, you would have to go into some kind of prison system to work off that debt that you owe now to the insurance company. So it would keep, and also, let's say for instance, the premium will cover it. If you committed murder, that insurance company is not going to take the risk of you going out and committing murder again. So they're going to raise your premiums up some ridiculous number that you can't pay, and no other insurance company is going to pay because it's too much risk. So then you're going to have to go to prison then. So even if you got off, even if you got off of that crime mistake, there was a lot of evidence, but it was whatever they call it, circumstantial or something like that. But the insurance company still thinks that you're too much of a risk to take. You might end up having to go to prison anyway because it's too much of a risk for them to put you out in society. So in order for you to have insurance, because you have to have insurance whether on people's property, you would have to end up staying in prison or a prison system in order to, live, because otherwise you'd be exiled from the country or something like that. So those prisons would then also have to compete for you, so there wouldn't be a lot of the injustices that happen in prisons, with all the, lots of rape and things like that happen in prison, not just between prisoners and, other prisoners. Lots of times it's the officials that are over them, are committing sexual acts and, abusing them, and I mean, you see videos all the time of them getting abused, and that wouldn't happen this site because nobody would ever go to those prisons anymore because they're choosing, the individual gets to choose the prison as long as the insurance company approves of it, their choice, because there might be some prisons out there that have a tendency of people escaping, and the insurance company, since they're liable for you if you go out, they're not going to want you going to a prison that's got that kind of reputation. So it'd be both. You both have to approve of the prison. And the other one that people always associate with government that they would need is defense, and that one would probably be also handled by an insurance policy. The main brunt of defense insurance would be major companies with massive amounts of assets. Like say for instance some company that's got a skyscraper in New York City. If New York City was all of a sudden Anarcho-Capitalism, they would have this huge risk of all these skyscrapers if they covered a lot of skyscrapers. So they would eventually realize that the risk reward is greater or is lessened if you have this amount of defense. And, and that discourages people from attacking you. So therefore, you have less of a risk. So it mainly be handled by insurance companies. And you're probably going to want to have any kind of house. If you own property, you're going to probably want to have some kind of insurance policy to cover that in the event of a bombing or something like that, and somebody destroys your property. You're going to want some, a defense or an insurance policy to cover that. So therefore, they also have that incentive to protect your house. Maybe not. They might eventually think that it's less of a risk to actually pay it out, or I should say, less of a risk reward kind of situation to have more troops maybe or something like that. The companies would make those decisions, and since private companies are making those decisions, they're going to make them efficiently. So they're going to find out whichever ways are the most effective uses of their dollar to provide defense. So therefore, they're going to keep their premiums lower by doing so. And the companies that do the best job are going to get the more companies because they're cheaper. So you have this kind of competition that arises from this. And then the other ones that people always associate with government, the police and the fire department and things like that. But those things have already, in some cases, been shown to be able to provide defense, or private, especially firefighters. That's been done. Police not so much. But I started breaking it down. If you think about, also fire would probably be under defense, or I should say, fire department will probably be under your household insurance. A lot of it. If you have an insurance policy, and if there's a fire department within so many, miles, you pay for that fire department for the coverage in case something happens. You're fired. Then that defense company, or I should say, that insurance company, is going to have, going to offer you lower premiums because you're a part of this fire department. And a fire department, it doesn't take much per month to pay for a fire department when you break it down to everybody that's living there. Because fire departments, you got to think, I don't know if a single person has lost their house to a fire. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Obviously it happens. And it happens all the time. But, you got to think about it per person, how many times their house is going to burn down. How many times they're going to have to call in the fire department. It doesn't happen that much. So there is a need for it, obviously. But the need is a lot less than it would be for, say, police protection. And as far as the police, even if you ignore the fact that private companies are always going to be more efficient and cheaper at providing a service, the NYPD, I'm using New York City because it's the easiest way of explaining this. The NYPD, I did research on it. If you break it down per person in New York, how much they would pay per month if it was private, if New York City Police Department, their whole budget was private, and it would be $40 per month per person. And you got to think, you pay that much for your cell phone. I mean, you got a family of four pays $170 for the cell phone. So that's only $160 for four people. So it's not that much when you think about it. But then you got to think, in this society, there's going to be no taxes. You're never going to pay income taxes. You're never going to pay sales taxes. None of those taxes. You think no property taxes. None of this stuff is going to be happening. The only thing you're going to pay for is the services you want and you need. You think you need yourself. And police is going to be something everybody's going to need. So it's probably going to be something where, like, there might be a law there or something that says you have to have a police, a defense, or a police protection policy in order to, be a part of society. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how exactly this works, but I'm just saying how it could. And that's pretty much the main problems that most people think about when they think of what government provides. And then you'll hear progressives, talking about how welfare and stuff like that. But you got to think, if welfare was a private charity and people seen how ineffective it is at getting people out of out of what it's supposed to do, get people out of poverty, and how little it does to do so, and how they spend all this money and they're not effective in doing what their core mission statement is, then they're going to start giving money to them. So the money will go to an organization that's more effective at doing so. And charities are much better at providing social programs than is the government. I mean, anything you think of the government doing, they're struggling in everything, housing, all those things. And those things can be done by the private charity funds. And since they're not paying any taxes, you're going to have more money to spend on those things. So you might give $5, a month to some charity, to help feed the starving and house the poor and all this stuff, So I mean, it's not, society wouldn't break down and people would stop helping each other just because there's no government. I mean, if anything, it would be more, and that's shown throughout history. When the government starts spending money on these programs, people think that they don't need to do those things. They don't need to give to charity because the government's handling it. But the government, like I said, is an inefficient way of doing anything. So that's just another example. So this has been Clint Lee, for Dummies, and thanks for tuning in.